gentlemen, live on the Fuse UK. It's the one and only, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man too sweet to be sour. He is your friend. He is my friend, but he's not the friend behind the person standing behind you. Luke Hughes.
Yes, people, what's happening? Nice one for coming back to the Fuse UK. It's much appreciated as always. Got a special guest on the podcast tonight. He is the main man behind all the great matchmaking within the BKFC. It's none other than Mr. Nate Shuck. What's happening, bro? You good?
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, not a problem, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. How's things?
Everything's going well, man. Sorry, I was just got a new computer, so I'm sitting here messing around with it, trying to make sure everything's going well. But up here in Pennsylvania, just got some snow.
Lovely.
Besides that, life is great.
Of course, did you have a good Christmas and that, yeah?
Yeah, I got spent with family, and I'm in my 40s now. So, spending time with the family and friends is what's important. And, we got to do, a little bit of hiking and got to just spend some good quality time together.
Yeah, lovely. It's what it's all about in a family time. I was wondering, mate, if we could start this podcast just by giving us a little introduction on yourself and how you got into the combat sports world and matchmaking and things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been involved in the promoting and matchmaking side since I was 22 years old. Started down in North Carolina, did some events in North and South Carolina, ended up meeting up with Dave in 2006 on when I was dealing with another show. 2009, I moved back to Pennsylvania and I was doing some promoting there. And Dave was a promoter outside the Philly area, and I was a little bit more north. And 2 years later, I approached him with an idea for getting some TV time. And he pretty much told me that the idea I had was a great idea, but I was going to overpay for it by a lot. So he really mentored me in understanding about, TV and things of that nature. So we ended up doing some business together. We co-promoted a couple shows, and then eventually I just fizzed out my company, merged in with his. He told me about this crazy idea of bare knuckle fighting. He did his first show back in 2011. And then ended up getting it legal, sanctioned, and regulated in 2018. And I've been matchmaking, since day one. So over 5 years strong with the fastest growing company in the world. And it's been a ride. It's been a great time. And I wouldn't trade it for any other business.
Oh, 100%, mate. And what were your first thoughts when you actually went to a live event and seen this bare knuckle action?
So are you talking about for the first BKFC event?
Yeah, the first time you ever witnessed like the bare knuckle live.
Oh, it was so. I ended up having to work the back. The first show, it was in Wyoming, right? So we all flew into Denver. It was like 100-mile drive from the Denver airport to Wyoming, and everyone's like doing 50 different things, and from setting up the venue to having to deal with the front of house, and then eventually having to deal with the back of house. So for whatever reason, the backstage manager didn't make it there. I'm not sure what happened. So they asked, is anyone like confident in getting these fighters time to get on out here? So I was like, I'll do it. So I threw the headset on, threw the mic pack on, looked at the fight card and started getting these guys out there. And I was I'd say 75 feet from the ring. And when I heard Arnold Adams land the first clean shot, I was just mind blown. I was like, wow, this is totally different than any other sport, because you could relate to that sound of a punch just hitting another person. And we had 10 bouts on the card. We got them done in 3 hours. It was an absolute amazing time. Afterward, I was talking to the fighters, and they loved it. They said how it was different, how the training for it was easier than boxing. They loved to be able to clinch and fight, and do dirty boxing. They loved the 2-minute rounds. back then we dabbled with like talking about doing maybe 7 rounds of fight, maybe doing 9 rounds of fight. After we saw the first one, we knew 5 rounds, 2 minutes a round. We had a perfect formula. We had the perfect fighting platform. We started getting attention from high-level fighters. And, I mean, as a team, we knew we had something. It was just a matter of now, getting it going and getting it more mainstream.
When you first set out on this little journey, did you see it getting as big as it was as quick, and the stars that you've got that have came over to the BKFC? Did you really see it expanding that quick as it did?
I think we wanted to believe we were going to be huge right away because we were trending number 1, number 2 in the world on social media. So
yeah,
when we did the first show, I can only speak for myself. I didn't think we were going to be like trending number 1 in the world on social media. But like, if you see my social media stuff, I'm not a big social media person. So like, I don't know what makes things go viral necessarily. After the first show was over, all of us looked at each other and we knew we had the best product out there in combat sports and maybe sports right now. So it was a matter of having the reality sink in. Like, wow, Dave just created a sport that's never been done before, legal, sanctioned, regulated, and everyone in the world is talking about us. So I don't think for me it really set in until Knucklemania 1. But again, like when you're behind the scenes and you're doing stuff, it's daily life. So Knucklemania 1 for me is when like reality really sat and said, we really do, well, not just said really do, we really are competing with the biggest promotions in the world. And look at all the media attention, even like the Polyman Aji fight. I mean, hundreds of millions of impressions and people around the world talking about it.
Yeah.
Knucklemania 1 was that point for me. And it could be different for other people in the team, but that's what stood out.
Yeah, and like Artem Lobov and Jason Knight, that was roughly around the same time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, up until Knucklemania 1, we've had some wars. Tony Lopez, Joey Beltran, at the time, I mean, it's probably the greatest combat sports fight I've ever seen. And 5 years later, there's probably a dozen others that rival that fight. So Lobov, like you mentioned, with Jason Knight, a great fight. I mean, the first one was just, people couldn't stop talking about it, right? Because they're both warriors, they're both tough. But since then, like this year, we started off in January with Keith Richardson versus Justin Scoggins. Again, 2 debuters. And they went to war, and that was one of the greatest fights I've ever witnessed. So every year we have one of those fights, if not more. And I'm curious to see it as we get more talent and we get higher level athletes. I'm curious to see like, is there a max to the excitement that we can get? And I don't think we saw it yet, but we've had some definitely exciting fights.
Oh yes, 100%. And your job, you must be tortured, Nate. Your messages and that you must get absolutely tortured, dear, off fighters and people wanting to fight for the promotion and stuff.
Yeah, so just to kind of put it in context, we've had over 7,000 people apply for the tryouts. I'm not sure which tryout it was anymore. I'll have to go back and double check. But I posted on Facebook. I was getting at least one tryout submission a minute for over I think it was 1,190 some I got, and it was only 2 minutes where I didn't get a tryout. I'm talking all day, all night, just submission after submission, just pouring in. It was to the point where I knew I had to email people and say, hey, not this one, maybe a future one.
Yeah.
Because, even the law of numbers, right? So even if only 10% showed up, and let's say, we had 1,200 applications, 120 people, we couldn't do, not at that location. Yeah. So I went through them. I talked over some teammates. We invited 250 people, and I think like 90 some of the 250 ended up showing up. And it was still a great tryout, but there's so much buzz around BKFC. And let's say there's 30 or 40 promotions. So I probably watch just as much, if not more, bare knuckle than anybody in the world because I'm studying film and all that. Let's say there's 30 or 40 bare knuckle promotions in the world. People might be able to name 4 or 5 tops here in the United States. Unless you're a hardcore fan, there's probably only 4 or 5 you can actually mention. But when people talk about bare knuckle, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is BKFC, and rightfully so. We have the most exciting fighters on the planet today, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And obviously, when you were matching these fights up, what's the main thing you go off? Is it the BKFC ranking system?
No. So when I'm watching film, you can have two great fighters, and they could perform well, but against each other, they kind of nullify themselves out, right? Because it turns into a strategy. And it's hard for me to critique a fight. Like at the moment when it's happening, I have emotions, right? Everyone does. But when afterward, I have to sit there and realize that these two fighters are getting punched in the face without gloves on. So of course there's going to be some hesitation sometimes going in, because they can go in, get punched, get cut, and a cut, even if it's small in a bad location, could stop a fight. And we have at least a third of our fighters get cut. So I have to kind of weigh that out when I'm matching it. So when I'm sitting there, I'm looking at, if I was a fan, what fights do I think, or what styles do I think would make for an exciting fight? And it's not always the best fighters in the world. And that's what I think a lot of people don't really understand, is I can find two lower level, lower ranked fighters who may not have the best records and put them together and get an exciting fight out of it. Now, I could also find two of the top rated guys or women and put them together, and the fight's just not as good. And this isn't a knock, and I don't want to, I'll just generally speak. There was a card several months ago. Looking at the card, I thought it was going to be one of the best cards we ever had. And the criticism that came back on the card, it was just like, hey, it didn't live up to the hype. And for me, I have to go back then and see, what did I miss? Was there something leading up to that card that I didn't catch, that if I would have switched some of the fights or matched them differently to get an exciting card? Because when you have 4,000 or 5,000 people in an arena watching it, you can't have two bad fights when you only have 10, right? So I'm my biggest critic. And if you ever see my board at the office, and maybe one day we'll do it from there. And I have actually, for the Philadelphia newspaper, when they did an interview, they had a picture of senior and junior at the board, and you can just kind of get an idea what's going through my head, because I really it's not just grabbing two fighters and just throw them in there. We sit there and we analyze things and erase the board and rewrite it up. And, we spend, I couldn't imagine how much time every day going over cards. So I hope that the fans love it as much as we do, because at our level, at least, I'm not saying the local promotions that do local regional bare knuckle, I don't know how they operate, but for us, with thousands of fighters to choose from, it's not just, we have 100 guys, let's put some fights on.
Yeah. And styles make fights, don't they? You could have a low-ranked fighter who's got a style. That's why you have these big upsets when the underdog always wins a fight. It's the style that makes the fight, in it, not so much the experience.
Yeah, and again, you said it. In bare knuckle, there are no gimme fights. Even if a fighter has, a subpar record, a lot of times they have nothing to lose then. So those are really dangerous fights, especially for the undefeated fighters that are, in contention for a potential title shot. Fighting an opponent who is 1-3, 1-4. We have fighters that, when we look at the viewing, a lot of our fighters that have the most YouTube views tend to be the ones that are around the 500 record. And that's just statistics, right? So the Tom Schoaf, Joe Elmore, Zach Kalmus.
First two people I thought of was Tom Schoaf and Joe Elmore.
Yeah, they're never in a boring fight.
Caleb Harris.
Never in a boring fight. But because of their style, it takes one punch, and you could be, on the L instead of on the W. So those are scary fighters that anyone in their weight class has to be cautious with, because they're intense. They put it all on the line. They're willing to get knocked out. I don't think Joe Elmore's ever been knocked out, but he's willing to get in there and mix it up with anyone at his weight class. So they're dangerous. And on paper, it might not look like, number wise, it might not look like a great matchup, but then after we look back and we're like, man, anything can happen in this game.
Yeah. And have you been keeping an eye on the UK side of things? I know you obviously watch all the bare knuckle, but like, do you look deep into the UK side of the fighters?
I do, and again, I'm going to be a hard critic on myself. I have the luxury of having a great team in UK, so I can kind of watch it as a fan and not as a matchmaker, because I know when the time comes and we want to bring a fight over from the UK, that our team over there is going to send over the right people. So if I say, hey, I need someone to fight, this opponent or this person, they're going to get me the right person just because we have such a great team. Yeah. So when I watch those fights, I don't sit there so much and write down the name and do my research on them and watch their other fights. I'm a fan for the day. I grab an iced tea. I hop on the computer or on the TV and I sit there and I watch it and I enjoy it without having to sit there and analyze it. Because again, I know if I pick up the phone, shoot an email over, hit up Mark, hit up Andrew, and just, hey, I need a guy at this weight from over there, they're not going to lead me astray because they do things, top notch.
Yeah, they definitely do, mate. And who's your favorite UK fighters?
I try not to talk about favorites and whatnot. There's a lot of talent over there.
Who would you like to see come over to America to fight?
Well, anytime we talk about heavyweights, we need more heavyweights, and I think right now the UK has some promising heavyweights.
Yeah,
155 is a deep weight class, but I still think James Lilley is probably at the top of the 155ers in the world, let alone just in the UK. And I know he's not from UK, but Wales. I don't know how all that works over there, but I consider me the UK fighter. But he's one of the best in the world. We love having him fight over here. So, I mean, we can go down the list of who's entertaining, who we come over. I know certain fighters that I talk to that we'd love to get over here can't. And I know we have fighters in the United States that can't travel abroad. So there's always those issues that make it kind of hard for matchmaking. But I didn't know what to expect until I went to the London show. When I went to the London show, seeing the difference in training, seeing the difference with the gyms, even though there are some noticeable differences, it doesn't take away from the level of talent because there's a skill set there that's been taught maybe through the centuries. I don't know how far back the underground fighting scene goes there, but I think I'd safe to say centuries. The nuances that they learn, that they implement when they fight, you can tell if someone's been over there training. And I would kind of compare it to, probably Thai fighters going to Thailand and training Muay Thai there with actual practitioners. Yeah, they just have a different skill set that translates well, and you can see the level of talent there. And when we bring them over, typically they do well against fighters from around the world.
Yeah, of course, mate. And what's the plans for Nate Shuck? What have you got planned for 2024 with the BKFC?
So, ideally, it looks like we're going to have 29 domestic events. And domestically, I'm talking Canada as well. Nice. It looks like we'll have 29 domestic events. I expect us to have a solid foothold in Mexico, maybe 6 to 8 shows in Mexico. I would hope we still have around 8 shows over there in the UK. I'd expect us to continue with Thailand because they do such a high level product over there, and there's so much talent that can fly in and out of Thailand pretty easily. Yeah, I'm not sure the dates coming up for like South Africa, and I know there's a couple other countries that I won't leak yet, but there's a couple other countries who have a huge interest in BKFC. So I'm excited. I did not get to go to Bulgaria. I know there's another show planned for there in 2 to 3 months. Yeah. Maybe I'll get to go on the next one. It's a beautiful part of the world. I love traveling. I've been to 21 countries, I think, so far. So getting to go to Bulgaria or Thailand and watch some fights, would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm hopefully going to Bulgaria myself in
Oh yeah,
March. Yeah, so it'll be good to hook up if I see you over there. Get a little interview.
nice. Yeah, it depends on if we have a show on 329. If
Yeah,
we end up doing a show on 329, then I'll stay back and head to that state and prep. But if not, I have my passport. I'm not sure if I need a visa to go there. I don't think so, but it's not a bad flight from what I hear. You know, stop through
yeah.
maybe London or Frankfurt, Germany, and head on over.
It's going to be hard for you to get away in it this year with there being that many shows and that busy.
What was that?
It's going to be hard for you to get away this year with it being that busy in the States.
Yeah, yeah. I would estimate that we'll probably be somewhere in the ballpark of 50 shows, and for the year worldwide. What's tough for me is I don't know all the like international holidays. I'm lucky that the United States holidays are on my phone, so um, planning around. There's 52 weeks in a year, right? So when we're trying to do 50 shows, gives you 2 weeks off. Well, Christmas this year, I think, is on like a Wednesday. 12/25 is on a Wednesday this year. So we won't do a show the week Friday after that in the States anyway. So it gives you 51 weeks to do 50 shows. And it's kind of tough. So there are going to be instances where we have 2 shows in a weekend, potentially, especially with some of these other international shows. But fans are going to be able to tune in from around the world and watch shows in hopefully 9 different countries, it seems like.
That's great, mate. And the question, what a couple of people have told me to ask you is, when UFC fighters and the big names are coming into the BKFC, why do they get a shot over the ranked fighters who are like in the top 5 in the divisions? Like, for example, Austin Trout fighting Palomino for the belt. They're saying, why can't somebody in the rankings fight instead?
Yeah, so it's a case by case thing. The Palomino Trout was a fight that was supposed to happen previously. We weren't able to make it happen. So it ended up getting pushed, and Palomino ended up fighting Lilly, won that fight against James Lilly. And then we looked at rerunning the Trout fight. I think when you have certain athletes that have huge accolades, such as Austin Trout does, I don't necessarily think that they need 3, 4, 5 fights. So what makes bare knuckle different is we created a whole new sport. So we had people contending for titles with 3 fights. You typically wouldn't see that in any other high level combat sport. There's very few, and I know it's happened, so I'm not going to say never, but there's very few instances where athletes go into the number 1 organization in the world in that sport and then contend for a title. Yeah. Austin Trout is a very high level athlete, not just a boxer. He's a high level athlete. He showed he's comfortable in the circle, and he performed very well against another high level athlete in Diego Sanchez. So the decision to make it a title fight wasn't taken lightly. We didn't start off with it being a title fight. We discussed it. We weighed the pros and the cons. And at the end of the day, it was the decision that we felt was best. And we pushed forward with it. And I know it upset a couple people. But I think, and this isn't downplaying those that were upset with it. Yeah. I think that every decision I make sometimes with matches is going to upset somebody because everyone has their own ideas of who should be next. And we have a ton of talent at 165, a ton. We have a couple of younger fighters that are coming on up that I think should have 1 or 2 more fights. We have some seasoned fighters that have recently had a loss or a loss within 1 fight. And I don't think that any of them should have been, let me rephrase it. I don't think that if we would have put any of them in there, no one would have had a second guess about it, because all of them deserve or are one fight away from deserving a title shot.
Yeah.
But at this time, we felt as a company, we felt this was the match to make, and this was worthy of a title.
Yeah, and it says that it's for the vacant 165, but wasn't Palomino the 165-pound champion anyway, and the 155, or did he vacate the 165?
So he, at the time, he was a 155-pound champ. Elvin Brito defeated Caleb Harris, became the 165-pound champ, and then went on to defend it. He ended up fighting Palomino. Palomino beat Brito. Yeah. And then Palomino did not defend the 65-pound title.
Right.
It appeared as though he was going to stay at 55, and he was going to have a fight against Trout outside the weight class. And then we ended up having a couple 65-pound fights, and then it ended up being Gogo versus Lindsay, and Gogo came away as the victor for that one.
Yeah.
With some things happening, we Gogo, his contract was up. We didn't get to a renewal point, I should say, a contract was offered for an extension with BKFC, and we ended up not coming to an agreement at this time, and we can't leave weight classes just sitting kind of empty and hanging around while we have all these talented fighters. So the decision was made for Palomino to compete at 65. Now, what does that mean for 55? I don't know. Does that mean he vacates that and stays at 65? Does he look at moving to 75 after this? We'll see. I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. Let's see how he does here. Win or lose, if he has depending on how the fight goes, maybe he decides to go back to 55. Or like I said, if he wins, maybe he pushes harder for a bigger name. And Austin Trout's already a huge name, so there's not too many names bigger than him out there.
Yeah, he's got a very hard fight in Austin Trout. He's not going to be no walkover. Austin Trout's it's a great matchup, mate, to be honest. It's going to be an unbelievable fight.
Yeah, I mean, even though Austin's only 1-0 in bare knuckle, he can't be taken lightly.
He's WBA champion, wasn't he?
Yeah. So we'll definitely see how it goes. I'm excited. We have some really good cards coming up. It's just one of them happens to be the main event, but after that, we have some prospects events coming up in Virginia and Canada, and so it's going to be a great year.
It definitely is, mate. And before we wrap it up, mate, is there any advice or anything you can give? Because over here in the UK, their dream is to come over to the States and fight. So all these young lads who are coming through, they're all trying to impress America, and they want the shot to get over there. What are you looking for in a fighter over here? What interests you in bringing them over to the States?
So first, skill does matter, right? So you have to be able to go in there and you have to be able to deliver. One thing that we see a lot of times is fighters that are used to competing on a local stage, when they get in front of 4, 5, even 8,000 people, the lights, they get them, right? So it's hard to train for unless you're fighting for other large organizations. So you have to be comfortable just competing in front of crowds, and winning helps a lot. But the second part is people they have to want to watch you. They don't have to like you. They have to want to watch you. And I think that's still something that a lot of people, it's hard for them to understand, because they feel as though the best fighters in the world should maybe make the most money or get the most attention. And that's not always the case. We have, you can go through our YouTube and look and see, what fights have the most views. And like I said, Tom Schoaf, Joe Elmore, Zach Kalmus, they're phenomenal fighters, but they're not the champions of their divisions. Yet they have millions and millions of views because people want to watch them. If the people watch because they love them, or they watch because they want to see them get beat up, it doesn't matter. They're tuning in. So you have to have people want to watch you. And that's kind of like my biggest thing. If you have a manager, make sure your manager is doing the best they can for you. Make sure your team understands that bare knuckle is different than boxing and MMA. So learn how to fight our rule set, because other promotions may not allow the clinch. They may do 4 rounds instead of 5. They might be 3-minute rounds instead of 2. They might have 7 or 9 rounds. Who knows? So or no time limit. Understand our rules. Have a team that understands the rules. Keep fighting, keep winning. And again, we have a phenomenal team over there in the UK. They're constantly scouting the talent there, and when they see something, they let me know.
Yes, definitely, mate. Well, I really appreciate you coming on tonight, Nate. Thank you very much, pal. And is there anything else that you want to share with us before we wrap it up?
We have the Prospect Series coming out. I know we have one over there. We have some coming up here in America and Canada. Make sure you guys tune in. For fighters that are young in the sport and haven't fought for us before, make sure they get out there to a tryout. It's very important. Chris Lytle makes it to most of them. I expect he's going to be making it to a lot of the international ones as well. He's a plethora of knowledge. He knows bare knuckles so well, so he can teach people pointers, and he has a keen eye for talent. If you have questions about it, hit us up on Instagram, myself or Chris. And I look forward to coming on over there and meeting with more people, because you guys have an amazing fan base, a ton of talent in your fighters, and you guys are growing. And I heard you might be coming over here to the States. So I look forward to it.
Just found out today, so I'm going to be getting it funded to come over and stay for a few weeks and film with some of the USA BKFC lads, which I'm over the moon with, and I can't wait. So yeah, mate, I'm really excited for it.
Absolutely. Well, let me know. You've been a huge asset to us. So if there's anything that we can do for you while you're here, please let me know. I'm not sure where you're going to be staying at, through the whole thing, but whatever I can do.
Yeah, that's great, man. I really appreciate that, Nate. Thank you very much, pal. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, mate.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You too.
See you later, Nate. Ta-ra, mate. Yes, people. What a guy, Nate Shuck, the man behind all the magic, putting all these great fights together, entertaining us all. I'm going to put all Nate's social medias in the description, so make sure you just go over there, follow him, keep your eyes peeled for some of these great shows that are coming up. I'm going to also put the links to the tryouts and that the UK put out the other day. And yes, people, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evenings too. Big shout out to RSD Transportation and Recoveries and Noir Boxing for sponsoring the show. Thank you very much, people. Good night. God bless.